Based on the manga series Onigoroshi, and not the anime series, Demon City Shinjuku, Netflix's latest Japanese action flick, Demon City, is an absolute belter. Boasting visceral action, a simple but effective story, and well-choreographed fights throughout, this movie may just be one of the sleeper hits of the year. The story centers on a man named Sakata, who works as a hitman and takes out anyone who stands in his way. Unfortunately, Sakata bites off more than he can chew when a deadly gang called the Kaimi break into his house and hold his wife and daughter up at gunpoint. Refusing to play ball, Sakata is forced to witness both his wife, Aoi, and daughter, Ryo, killed before his eyes, framed for their murder and left in a vegetative state. Fast forward 12 years and Mayor Ryu Tsunehara, the leader of this masked gang, has seized control of Shinjo City. The Kaimengumi are involved in all sorts of shady deals, with blood money flowing into the city through human trafficking and big drug operations behind the scenes. Why are Kaimengumi so dangerous? With nobody left in the city to stop them, and with officials on their payroll, Kaimengumi catapulted Ryu Tsunehara, the head of their gang, into a mayorship role which changed Shinjo City, but not for the better. Kaimengumi started out by doing business with human trafficking and drugs, allowing them to expand their power across Shinjo City. Sakata unwittingly done them a favor, killing their rivals and allowing these demon-masked psychos to rise up. Despite adopting the public-facing mantra of cleaning up the city of crime, in reality they're doubling down on this. They've taken resources away from the weakest parts of society in a bid to make the rich, and by extension their own operation, that much more powerful. A lot of this money was put into PR for Ryu Tsunehara, with the people believing he's helping them when in reality, he's doing just the opposite. Is Ryo really dead? After clearing out an entire warehouse full of goons, Sakata is in for a shock when he finds out that Ryo is still alive. Tsunehara rings Sakata after the factory fight and reveals this, promising that if he continues this revenge mission, his daughter will face a nasty end. Kaimengumi started out by doing business with human trafficking and drugs, allowing them to expand their power across Shinjo City. Sakata unwittingly done them a favor, killing their rivals and allowing these demon-masked psychos to rise up. Despite adopting the public-facing mantra of cleaning up the city of crime, in reality they're doubling down on this. They've taken resources away from the weakest parts of society in a bid to make the rich, and by extension their own operation, that much more powerful. A lot of this money was put into PR for Ryu Tsunehara, with the people believing he's helping them when in reality, he's doing just the opposite. Is Ryo really dead? After clearing out an entire warehouse full of goons, Sakata is in for a shock when he finds out that Ryo is still alive. Tsunehara rings Sakata after the factory fight and reveals this, promising that if he continues this revenge mission, his daughter will face a nasty end. Doing some research, Sakata learns that Ryo is being held by a company called Shinjo Security, which is basically a shell company for the Kaimengumi to hide behind. Sakata finds the address and fights his way up into the apartment. There, he finds Kanta Phase, who has been posing as Ryo's father all this time. He's also the man who shot his wife dead. All of this is unbeknownst to Ryo, of course, who sees this man as her father, having been raised by him for the past 12 years. Ryo shoots Sakata with an arrow, but thankfully he's not dead, saved by Officer Takigawa Yoshifumi. How does Sakata find Ryo? With Ryo's life on the line, Sakata is tasked with visiting Maharoba to try and save his daughter. So off he goes, and Sakata absolutely kicks ass. Unfortunately he lets his guard down and eventually finds himself facing off against Tsunehara. Thankfully, Officer Takigawa arrives and shoots the place up, buying Sakata some crucial time, while Ryo finally recognizes her true father after he screams at her to run away. Who wins in the final fight? Finally the match takes place between Sakata and Tsunehara, with the masked man adamant that he wants to see the demon unleashed from Sakata. All this time he's been harking on about the fact one person is born with this gift, but Tsunehara is extremely talented, regardless. He beats Sakata and after slicing off his hand, is incredulous when the man stands back up and continues fighting. He realizes that Sakata will not give up no matter what. In fact, they both wind up stabbing one another during the climactic bout, but Sakata is quicker and manages to best the mayor, hacking and destroying him. With the fight seemingly over, Sakata is suddenly shot dead by a returning Kanta phase. Ryo realizes she's been tricked, but as she steps back and rejects him, Sakata kills the guy before embracing his daughter. Before he dies, he apologizes to Ryo for not being able to protect her mother before passing away. Sakata dies, but Ryo is alive and well. She's been saved from Sunahara and his goons, and she slips away as the cleanup crew arrive. When Ryo's life is in danger, Sakata is sent to Maharoba to save his daughter. The connection between Sakata and Ryo isn't initially clear, and it seems Ryo doesn't realize that he's her real father. However, Sakata is determined not to let that stop him. He dives headfirst into enemy territory with one clear goal: to rescue his daughter. Once he arrives, Sakata goes all out. He takes down anyone in his way with brutal efficiency, showing his combat experience and fearless determination. He fights like a legendary warrior returning to settle unfinished business. But fate doesn't make it easy. He lets his guard down for a moment and suddenly finds himself face to face with Sunahara, still alive and just as dangerous. It's a heavy confrontation, two men with a dark history, one representing destruction, the other justice. As things escalate and Sakata starts to wear down, it looks like he might lose his life to Sunahara. But just then, Officer Takigawa arrives, guns blazing. He opens fire, causing chaos and buying Sakata a few precious moments to breathe and regroup. Meanwhile, Ryo, still caught in confusion and fear, hears Sakata shouting at her, "Run! Get out of here now!" That shout isn't just an order, it's filled with raw emotion. It hits her hard. In that moment, she recognizes something familiar in his voice, in his presence. For the first time, she realizes, this man is her father. Movements becoming fluid as he tried to channel his former strength, a bizarre yet comforting ritual in the face of the new life he was about to embrace. But as he practiced his familiar motions, something was off. The usual tension in the air, the feeling of danger lurking just out of reach, seemed to be present once again. He had survived the first battle. But was survival enough? Ryo, the arrow of fate. As Sunahara's movements grew more practiced, his mind wandered back to the days of his violent past. He thought of those he had harmed, and of the one person who had once been tied to his downfall, Ryo. Her father, once an ally to Sunahara, had been the driving force behind the chaos that brought about the downfall of his empire. Ryo, the daughter of the man he had betrayed, had become a living embodiment of retribution. It wasn't long before Ryo appeared, silent as a shadow, her bow at the ready. She had been waiting for this moment for a year, waiting for the right time to put an end to the life of the man who had nearly destroyed everything she held dear. Her father's death, caused by Sunahara's actions, had driven her to a singular purpose: revenge. With a swift motion, Ryo notched an arrow, the string pulled taut in her expert grip. There was no hesitation in her movements, only the cold determination of a woman who had carried the weight of vengeance for far too long. In a split second, the arrow flew, direct, deadly, and precise. The shaft cut through the air with the same swift certainty of fate itself. Sunahara, caught off guard, felt the impact at his neck. Blood sprayed as he crumpled to the ground, a final gasp escaping his lips as he fell to the temple floor. The end of the line. Sunahara's death was not dramatic, nor was it filled with the grandeur that he had once hoped for. It was a quiet end, a reflection of how far he had fallen from the powerful figure he once was. A year of false peace, a year of believing he could atone, had led to this inevitable conclusion. His life was extinguished, not by a violent rampage or a final battle, but by the precision of a single arrow from a woman who had waited too long to make things right. As the last breath left his body, Ryo didn't look back. She mounted her horse, the same horse that had carried her through years of relentless pursuit, and began to ride off into the night. The tension in the air seemed to lift, a long-awaited moment of closure finally achieved. The camera held on her figure as she disappeared into the darkness, the fading silhouette of her horse's hooves leaving echoes of a past long buried, the finality of her actions ringing in the air. Reflection on the journey. In the silence that followed, the movie's conclusion was clear: Demon City was no longer a place of violence and chaos. It had become something else entirely, marked by the end of the lives of those who had once ruled it. For Sunahara, the story had come full circle. From a villain, a mastermind, to a man whose own hubris and ambitions led to his undoing. And for Rio, her journey had been a long and arduous one, filled with pain and loss, but now it was over. She had brought justice, and with that, the cycle of vengeance was finally broken. As the film ended, one couldn't help but feel that, while the battles of the past had been fierce, the most significant fight was the one fought in the hearts of those who survived. Demon City, once a place of death and destruction, was left to heal, though the scars, like those on Sunahara,